Good evening, everybody. How are we? I hope you've had a lovely Easter Saturday and that you're getting ready for Easter Sunday tomorrow. Tonight I'm going to read you Dr. Dread and the Chair of 1,000 Farts. So we've got Dr. Dread here and the Chair of 1,000 Farts. And he teaches at Grunge Hill School. He's the science teacher. So here we have him with his chair of 1,000 farts. This is a horror story. Do you dare to read on? No? Then turn to the very next story. Yes, you have been warned. And don't blame me if you have nightmares. Dr. Dread was the most horrifying teacher who ever stalked the earth. He was half man and half monster. The science teacher revelled in his own horrifying appearance. He loved the fact that all the kids at Grunge Hill were terrified of him. The man smirked to himself as he darted out of his way. Dr. Dread's face was permanently scrunched up, like an angry walnut, holding a monocle in place like that. It looked as if he had just one beady eye, like a cyclops. I'm trying to do a beady eye. He'd long ginger sideburns or mutton chops creeping all the way down to his chin. Ginger hair exploded from his nose and ears like wildfire. His teeth were long and pointed like fangs. His nose was a wonderland for warts. He always wore the same white laboratory coat, except this white laboratory coat had not been white for centuries, as he never ever washed it. It was so thick with grime and grease, it was actually a deep shade of brown. There were so many stains on it. There was egg, blood, brown sauce, look at all the different shades, cream, cheese, spaghetti sauce, snot, drool, lard and marmalade. That if you dipped it in boiling water, you could have made soup. A soup that dinner lady Mrs. Splat might serve up. More of her wickedness later in the book. Dr. Dread had sandals on his feet so he could show off his terrifying toes. Ugh. They were a sight that would give you a fright with their long claw-like nails, open sores and rancid foot cheese. When Dr. Dread marked your homework, it would be returned with all sorts of nasties stuck to it. So you've got your homework there, you've got snot, drool, dandruff, nasal hair, fingernail grot, foot cheese, earwax, pus, a wart, a bit of broken tooth, something purple that despite being sent to the laboratory for tests, no one knew what it was. So far, so monstrous. But I haven't even told you the most horrifying thing about Dr. Dread yet. His bottom burps. He blew off all the time. His trumps were so frequent, they might as well have been continuous. There was less time when Dr. Dread wasn't passing wind than when he was. The slightest movement was enough to make the teacher release his poisonous gas. Sitting down, getting up, bending over, straightening up, coughing, sneezing, throwing, catching, scratching an itch, breathing, blinking, thinking. Good noises. Dr. Dredd's palps were so strong that they were actually visible. A trail of bubbles followed him around the school. His chair in the science room was known as the Chair of 1,000 Farts. Since Dredd sat there for hours at a time, releasing cubic metre after cubic metre of bottom gas, the chair was highly toxic. Once, as a dare, a girl put her nose right up against the seat of the chair. Look. Ooh. Immediately, she passed out and slumped to the floor. Thud. When she couldn't be revived, an ambulance was called. Nee-oh, nee-oh. The girl was rushed to hospital, where she was kept in an isolation ward for a week because of the gas. Beep, beep, beep. Months later, the girl returned to school, but she was never the same again. During lessons, she just sat at the back of the class, staring forward, silently rocking, a look of unspeakable horror in her eyes. It's because she put her nose on his chair. So if one of the pupils in Dr. Dredd's science class did anything wrong, he had the perfect punishment. He would make them sit in his chair of 1,000 farts. No, no, the child would cry, not the chair of 1,000 farts, anything but that. Dr. Dredd would grin, baring his fangs. Yes, boy, come here, he would say, beckoning them as he rose up out of his chair, of course leaving one last brown bubble behind. The child would then be led to the chair and ordered to sit. Reluctantly, they would. The entire class would look on at Dredd's poor victim, feeling the bottom burp slowly engulf them, or engulf them. Ah! They would scream as Dr. Dredd let out an evil cackle. Right, who else dares to talk in my lesson? There would be silence. One day, a boy arrived at Grunge Hill who had become the teacher's greatest foe, a boy so gruesome he made Dr. Dredd look like a beautiful princess. You might think that would be impossible, but you'd be wrong. That is because you've not met Bog. Bog was a boy who looked like he'd risen from a swamp rather than being born. No one knew if Bog was his real name or not, but it was certainly apt. Like a bog, he was damp and muddy. He had worms in his pockets, twigs and leaves in his hair, and moss growing out of his ears. When the boy walked, there was the sound of squelching. Squelch, squelch, squelch. Not only was he gruesome to look at, but Bog was bad too. Immediately he became known as the baddest boy in school. Bog never did his homework. His excuse? I ate it. Which was true. When the teacher became angry, Bog would snort with laughter. Snort. He wiped all the loo rolls from every toilet in the school. He swiped them even. Didn't wipe them, he swiped them. Then he wrapped the history teacher, Mr. Obsolete, in it while he was snoozing so that he looked like an Egyptian mummy. Next, he pinched books from the library and tore out all the pages to wipe his bottom, even though he never normally even wiped his bottom. He put the wiggliest, waggliest worms inside the girls' shoes when they were outside playing netball. When they slipped their feet back into them, they were horrified. Oh, yuck, no. Well, he doesn't sound very nice, does he? It's not nice not to be nice. We're going to find out tomorrow a little bit more about him. So, tomorrow is Easter Sunday. So, have a lovely day and we'll catch up again at the end of the day.